Aside from my new Cap 7 jacket, another highlight of the morning has been waking up to my Twitter, and I have 2 new followers on the heels of a tweet that I sent out. Hashtagged water polo and hashtagged Aristotle. Jack Coker, member of the U.S. national team coaching staff, now follows me, and Aristotle now follows me. Apparently Aristotle is on Twitter. So this has already been a huge success for me in my professional life. And I'm triply excited to be back, like John was saying, for the 3rd year. 3 years ago, we started this theme in Las Vegas, of all places, and then repeated it last year. And this is a massively tweaked, I recognize a lot of you from last year, this is a massively tweaked version of the things that we've been going over in this genre. And again, I'd like it to be a little less of a lecture format. There's just no way that you got to UCLA at 8:30 on a Saturday morning to be lectured by a philosophy professor. That cannot be what got you up and got you here. And so I do want this, I'm hoping this will be a little bit more interactive than me giving a lecture. And so to just, get things started, I'm gonna get to a couple of quotes, because what I'm gonna be doing, is framing just the lens that we're gonna look at this through. The last 2 years, a lot of what we've done is discussed like the ethical norms and rules. Like, is this unethical? Are you morally allowed to do such and such? And while important, that's really not, that's not the ethical life of human beings. We're not walking around trying to decide if we should hold the door open for someone or not, trying to follow these ethical rules. And what Aristotle instead framed the lens on is character. And he's really asking, what kind of a person do you want to be? Not what are the rules that we should decipher as far as living an ethical life. What kind of a person do you want to be? And one of my favorite quotes of all time, what we are, what we repeatedly do. Thank you, Wolf. We are what we repeatedly do. Is this on? Yeah. There, it is on? There we go. And so the idea here then is that living the moral life is not this episodic series of following rules. Excellence then is not an act, but a habit. So Aristotle's looking at the concept of living a moral life, not following a set of ethical norms and rules. And so once we take that into account, here we have this frame, and then we're going to get right into a couple of issues, sports-related and water polo related. So he's not so much asking, and pardon the annoying term, like philosophers just, we can't speak without at least throwing one out there. He's not looking so much at what is moral or what is unethical, what ought I to do or what ought not I do, but what kind of person do I want to be? A focus on character as opposed to ethical duties, maximizing utility, right? This utilitarian approach. And so that's really the example of consoling a friend is my example of supererogation, where when you have, the example that he uses is when you have this distraught friend, maybe he's going through a divorce, or you don't want to console him because you have some duty as a friend, right? Like, oh, friendship requires that I console my friend, or utilitarian, I ought to spend 3 hours there, it's okay, everything's okay. 2 more hours, I have a duty, right? Like a good friend is someone who naturally, out of habit, who this under the guise of we are what we repeatedly do. You're consoling a friend because that's the kind of person that we want to be, not because of any sort of ethical rules or laws. And so I want to start right here with something that we very likely take for granted, but philosophers of sport have a lot of fun with this. This is similar to the work that I do at Santa Clara University as a member of the board there for the Institute of Sports Law and Ethics. And so one of the questions that we're grappling with is, what do we do with the ball that is tipped out of bounds, but the referee gives us the ball anyway? Now, we know what the culture does. We know what basketball culture does, right? Everyone puts their hands up, right? It didn't go off me, and it didn't go off me. But physicists know that the ball went off someone. It didn't pop out of existence and then pop back into existence on the other side of the foul line. As a water polo goalie, between 5,000 and 10,000 times in my 30 years of keeping balls out of floating rectangles, the ball went off my thumb. Here we go. I wasn't explicitly lying, but through my body language, I was clearly sending a message. I didn't touch that. It should be our ball. Let's get the counterattack going. So the question, though, becomes interesting under the guise of character ethics, because we have this question: you're coaching, and it may or may not, and this is where the conversation might get interesting, it may or may not be important what age the athlete is. But if you're coaching a 10-year-old and the ball goes off his or her hand, and the referee says, "It's your ball," and the 10-year-old turns to you and says, "Jack, what? It went up. Coach, will take me out of it. Coach, it went off my fingertips. What should I do?" Thank you for the laughter, Wolf. You're stuck a little bit, because we know what is done. We know what the culture supports. So the question here is, how many of us in some way or another say to the 10-year-old, "Oh, you should lie to the adult and tell them that you didn't touch it so you can get something that benefits you even though you don't deserve it"? Which is kind of a version of what you have to say at that time. Show of hands. There's no way. There we go. What? Couple of hands. Yes.
I have a question.
Yes.
You say that the official decided to give you the ball. So in the official's mind, he already knew the answer from what he saw. So he's not asking the 10-year-old, "Did you touch it or not?" He's saying, "You didn't touch it. Here's the ball." So technically, you're not really lying, because you're not saying anything. You're just getting the ball.
What's the technically part there?
Well, you didn't say, "Oh, it is my ball. I didn't touch it." It's, he gave you the ball. You're like, "All right, he gave me the ball. He didn't see me touch it," or
right.
You know. So it's, I don't, like, I guess the difference is the level of like, it's, can we tier the ethics end of things, like, well, yeah, it's competition, the referee's doing their job, you know, they are making a decision on what they saw. Hey, who am I to tell them they're wrong?
Yeah, so as a quick starter here, my job is not to convince you of the right or the wrong answer here and say, "Oh, you've missed." My job is to hopefully here get the conversation started. So the first suggestion here is that it's sort of under the guise of competition with a referee there, you pass off that responsibility to the referee. And so now the response to the child would be, "Oh, the referee's in charge of this particular activity, and he says the ball is yours." Yes?
Yeah, I agree with Felix that, like, if the play happened and immediately the referee made a call, then okay, that's the call. You can't really, we're not going to go back. You can't change the referee's call. I agree with that. But typically the ref, especially if it's something close, the sun's there, he'll pause a second, maybe look over at the other ref, and if the coach is yelling, "Go!" and then the goalie's like, "Give me the ball," that I think is more what you're talking about. That split second of what the goalie does right after he blocks it. Does he block it or is he like, "Give me the ball," counterattack? And if that influences the referee's decision, I think that's more what you're getting at.
Absolutely.
Tip out, the referee made a call.
Absolutely. Yes.
And that was the levels of the, I guess, the severeness of
Right.
the ethics end of things, where they're making a decision because that's what they saw. And you always, like, I guess I always look at the karma, and whether you believe it or I believe in karma, that something always comes back one way or another. It's like, it all evens out.
Yeah.
You know, and I guess that's the way I convince myself. There's gonna be one time where we don't touch it, and they're gonna give, so it's like, it all evens, it all levels, it all balances itself out. That's what I tell myself to, I guess, make me feel better about not saying, "No, referee, we touched it."
Yeah.
You can give them the ball. I know there's only 15 seconds left in the game. It's a tie game.
Yeah.
You can have the ball back.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think at like 10, 12, 14, probably the instance where the kid looks at you or something, and you can tell the kid will tell the referee you touched it. And then as the level of competition gets better, get higher, thing, then it's the kid's decision.
Yes.
You don't want to teach the kid a good moral lesson that, at 10, that maybe if they touched it, it's out of bounds. They're going to be very confused.
Yeah,
They're new to the game. Wait, coach, you just told me if I touched it, it goes to bounds. He's now confused. Why don't I get the rules right? He's only 10.
This suggestion comes up a lot, and the question that it forces is, why would we change the ethical norm or ethical behavior when they're 16 as opposed to 10? Like, how can we justify if we agree that that's the right thing to do, how does it not become the right thing to do 6 years later? And this is a real question. Actually, this is where the excitement happens for me that this is a project I'm currently working on, yeah.
Well, I think maybe the 10-year-old wouldn't be able to differentiate from lying necessarily in sports, like a small lie versus a big lie. And then the 16-year-old can differentiate between a small white lie, I didn't touch that.
That's not actually a white lie, though.
Huh?
A white lie is like, what do you think of my new haircut? And you say, oh, Jack, I love it. Like, I love how you kind of gone right down the middle, but you're still hanging on to the scraps where you're like, oh, it's terrible. He's lying. It's a bold face. Like, we are telling the exact opposite about the state of affairs in the universe.
Okay. But, like, I'm saying the 16-year-old might not apply. Like, the 10-year-old will take that lesson and maybe go home and then lie to his parents.
Oh, okay, so that it goes outside the sporting institution.
Yeah.
I think that's a really important factor to consider. Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
So this kind of comes more to the core of like what our responsibility is to the child.
Yes.
Is it about winning games? Is it about like teaching them, responsibility? Is it about like improving them as people? And then what is our responsibility to them in that scope? It depends on how we're looking at it. If we see our job as like winning, then I think our answers might be different.
Right.
But if our job is to raise 10-year-olds and help them become better young adults, like better young men and women, then obviously, then in the moment, it might not be easy to differentiate, but in the grand scheme of it all, if it is a habit, the thought process that you go through, if that's what it is, then I feel like the answer is easy. All of us, I know we've all like been in that situation.
Yep.
So it's not, we take a step back and we look at it after the game is over. And someone asked us point blank this question, like obviously we know what we're going to say. It doesn't mean that we always act that way.
Yeah, it's very Aristotelian of you. If Aristotle were your coach, I think he would have you let.
I don't know. He doesn't even follow me on Twitter.
I got one hashtag is all you need. There's been a hand in the back, and then we can come here.
But the question then, beyond the ethics towards what we involve, is what does the child think about the referee?
Yep.
Because your lesson at that point, if
Right.
the one is going to be in the future when 16, he's getting up with the guy next to him, hoping the referee can see it. So I think with the young ones, you have this issue of not just ethics, but what is the referee's job and how you as the coach interact with the child and the referee to make sure that.
Yeah, really nicely put. Yes.
So I go back to say, like, I'm okay, like, it's like deciding when you want to apply your morals and your ethics. And is it wrong to say, if we're playing a team that we're up by 10 goals, no, referee, we tipped it, you can have the ball back. But if we're in the first quarter when it's really nothing happening and there's no pressure, yeah, we touched it. But in the fourth quarter of a tie game with 15 seconds left, like, I guess the question is, what's wrong with deciding at that point, you know what? It's not my job. The referee made a call. I'm going to sleep okay. Is it okay that I feel I'm okay with not telling the truth? I don't call it lying, because I say I'm not going to tell the truth. I'm not going to say anything, right? I'm not lying. Lying is a no. I didn't. Nobody touched it.
Plausible denial.
Lie of omission, though. Right?
It's more than a lie of omission. We don't have to call it lying. We can call it hoozy bopping. Like.
But I said, as a profession, should we feel bad that we're not bad people because we decide not to help the official make the call?
Yeah, no.
And I always look at this and I'm always thinking like, I'm a horrible person. I just told a 10-year-old not to do this because we're in a semifinal game of Speedo Cup and I know how happy he or she's going to be if we get to the championship game, right? But in order for me to give them their excitement of winning, I'm going to have to unfortunately teach them a lesson that I hope they don't think it's the norm.
Right.
So, like, should I feel bad about that?
Oh, well, whatever you got to do. That's how we juggle our cognitive dissonance is, sort of a personal thing. But I think that's actually the core question: is the relationship of ourselves to the referee. And one of the really interesting tensions in sport, especially youth sport, for me, is maintaining the paradigm of winning is everything, because that's out there in the culture. Winning is everything, and a lot of people who write in my area want to disabuse everyone of that and say, no, it's not. It's just a game. But I actually want us to, out of the one side of our mouths, maintain the winning is everything. Because if everything is on the line, if it's the fourth quarter of this really important competition, then you actually have the chance for real richness. If winning doesn't matter, or if you're up by 20, then of course, oh yeah, here, actually you can have a couple goals, like, oh, right? But when everything is on the line, even when we know that it's not, then that's where the richness happens, right? The term that we use is moral courage, right? Where you're stepping up and saying like, gosh, I'm gonna do the right thing, even though I'm gonna lose some stuff, money, goals scored, etc. That's your job, absolutely. Not at the high school level, but absolutely, right? A college coach's job, and he's saying, what should I be a good ethical person, or should I have a job and feed my family and own a home? Let's see. So that's the challenge in the richness. So I actually want to jump, given where we are. Let's see if I can jump. I want to jump way past. You're going to see the entire presentation, which we can come back together, striving together, some great examples. Because I think, especially with the coaches group, and again, I want to be really aware of going over here. We can come back to a couple of these issues if we have time. But this question, how do we view the referee and what do we owe the referee? And I want to get to this. On the heels of the conversation we just had, it's an interesting way to think about the ball being tipped out. If we're playing one-on-one basketball and he's dribbling the ball and it goes off my fingertips and out of bounds, pretty much everyone in that situation agrees that it would be morally questionable for me to say like, oh yeah, it was off you, right? And like take the ball. So in that case, pretty much everyone agrees that I'm morally required to say, oh no, you know what, actually went off my fingertips, here you go. But then all of a sudden, you involve a referee, and then everyone starts to say, oh no, now you try to lie to the referee to make it think it didn't go off of you, and so it makes the game less fair. Right? There's a pretty good bit of irony there, right? We bring in the impartial adjudicator to make things fair, and the instance becomes less fair. But truly, right, if you're viewing the referee as a part of the game, that those calls are what stands. Those calls are sort of the truth of the game. This is an epistemological position. What the referee says, and you actually kind of hinted to this in your earlier point. No, that is what happened in the game. Even though the scientists viewing it from outside say, no, it touched this human's finger, the referee then takes on that role. Yeah, well.
I think the game, there's so many things where you're trying to influence the referee. So I think you can frame it as, you can try and influence the referee, but whatever the referee takes in, makes the call, that's part of the game. Because anytime there's holding and you're not, if everyone said, hey, Mr. Referee, I held him underwater and you kicked me out, right? That's ridiculous. And it's the same sort of thing. So it's like, the referee is a part of the water polo game in other sports, and part of the acting, and I'm not fouling, and I did this, and then I look to see if he's not looking, and I can do something different than if he was staring at me. There's so much of that going on. I think, it can just be, hey, you can do whatever you want to influence the referee's call, because you can't just do the tip thing and then ignore all the holding and everything in the game. But once the referee makes the call, that's the call. And we don't have to go and say, and make the referee look bad and say, no, if the referee called the other way, say, excuse me, no, I tipped it, and then he looks bad.
Yep.
They're not going to change the call anyway. So the referees tell the kids they're not going to change the call. You can do things to try and influence what he does, but...
Yeah. It is. We do want to be aware of the showing up the referee. I will tell you, I'm 0 for 2 on telling the referee that our goalie tipped it. Like Doughton in our league championship game, Doughton was refereeing, and Giovanni was at the other side. He had a goalie tip, and it was like a pretty obvious goalie tip. And I was like, I had the ball, and I was like, he got a piece of that. Sit right here, and like, then it would be their ball. Doughton, I know the rules. I'm saying our goalie tipped it. Menlo's ball walked away like, what is wrong with Bowen? Why is he doing this? So I no longer have our goalies do that, but I don't have our goalies feign that they've touched it. If they make a block, they come down, they don't actively pretend as though they haven't. And so the question that I wanted to get to, I don't know how many of you have seen this letter, but I thought this would be a really ideal situation for a group of coaches to discuss. An open letter from Bob Korb, NC2A National Coordinator of Officials, this was just sent to me. Am I allowed to show this?
Yeah.
Oh.
That's why we're just having a meeting about it later, so it's like, yeah.
Do you guys want to take this on?
No, go for it. Absolutely not, yes.
So this was universally endorsed and co-signed by the 20-member National Evaluator Group. Gosh, it looks wordier than I'd hoped it would here. When the very first play of the game engenders a hey or a look of disgust or otherwise draws attention to the coach rather than the players in the water, it kickstarts a chain of events that seldom ends well. Think about it. Sending a message on the very first call of the game that the coach doesn't agree with the referee's judgment plants the seed of doubt in the minds of the players, spectators, possibly the opposing coach, who now feels compelled to match this behavior. Players play, coaches coach, officials referee, and fans cheer. Any role violation takes away from the decorum of the game, diminishes the overall quality of the experience. A coach who works the referee too much also sends a message to the fans, inciting them to start questioning the officials on every call. When referees start overthinking their calls, they get paralysis by analysis, and one possibly questionable call leads to another, and the decorum of the game starts to slip away, and we are just 3 minutes into the game. And this seems unique to water polo, or at least certainly seems more aggressive. I know basketball coaches tend to, maybe because they're kind of on court right next to the referees, tend to work referees. And if you watch NFL football games, every call is questioned. So this is, in no way is this water polo specific, but it does seem to me more prevalent in water polo than others. And I thought, what better place to spend a couple of minutes on this, especially under the watchful eye of Aristotle and looking at the relationship. Now that we have set a foundation, as I'd anticipated might happen, as referee as part of the game, and if we hold that as true, where you can see the argument start to develop, then how do we address this kind of remark in conjunction with that? We'll start in the back.
I'm not necessarily convinced that it's more prevalent, because I think what happens is, I think it's a presentation situation, where in other sports like basketball, football, those coaches are allowed to walk the sidelines with the officials, and they're allowed to have civil conversations.
Right, it's a nice point.
Disagreeing with them, probably even using much more choice language than we use typically. But it's not public. But because of our medium with the pool and the distance between officials and the lack of noise and fans in an indoor arena and stuff like that, all of our noise becomes much more aware to everybody else. So I don't know that I necessarily agree that it's a bigger issue in water polo than any other sport. It might even be more minor, it's just more public.
Just more public.
I also think that, when as college coaches, we received this letter, it was almost saying, it's your fault, the quorum is what it is, instead of saying, hey, let's work together on communicating during the game. Because it's crazy how our officials, I'm sure this is at every level because it's the same officials. The better officials are the ones that you don't have to say, hey, because next time you're next to them and say, how was that an exclusion? How was that not an exclusion? Or how was it? And they're going to say, coach, I saw him do that. But the ones that that will never listen to anything in the frustration of coaching, because it isn't easy, in every play, first quarter, you're going to say, I don't see saying, hey, as something that's, oh no, the referee's lost control of this game. I see running up past the 5-minute line, you suck. Now that's a different situation. And I think that when the letter came out, it was almost like you're reaching for what, I get it, the decorum that we need to look better, especially when we're trying to grow as a sport, especially when we're trying to prepare age group coaches and high school coaches, that if they want to be at the next level, administrators are not going to put up with that. So if a college coach is behaving this way, then why, and I'm a 14th coach, I'm like,
right.
Well, I'm going to do it too. And so we're setting the example. I get it, but the way the letter was approached was, you guys are screwing this up. The quorum is, we're having lack of whatever the control is. It's the coach's fault because you say you're because we're coaching, because that's what we're doing. We're coaching, not being disrespectful. Now, if there's that line that, because water polo is a judgment sport. Everything, it's like, we're all looking at it from a different angle. Even when the evaluators are evaluating it from a video, they don't have the same point of view of the referee or the coach. So if we're not allowed to respectfully express ourselves, just like, because this is sports in America, and maybe besides soccer, where at the international level, where the coaches just sit back and just don't do much, coaches are coaching, and part of coaching, whether we want to admit it or not, is interacting with officials.
Well, I guess that's a little bit the question that we're trying to address. Yeah.
But, well, as you're going through it earlier, this is exactly what I was thinking of. You're talking about morals, and, I mean, the whole idea of sport is that there's a set of rules, and you play a game under this set of rules. Not everybody's gonna be moral as far as, oh, I tipped the ball out or whatever, so you need somebody making those calls. I think we do cross the line in the sense that we start questioning the officials. I mean, we do more than most sports, I think, from what I've seen. It's just like the spectators, everybody gets into it, and they're just yelling at the officials is what I see. And, that's immoral, I think. I think, they make the call. Sometimes it's the wrong call, sometimes the right call. It's questionable a lot of times anyway. But the whole concept is that there's these rules, as somebody who makes the calls, we should be teaching the kids that they make the call, move on, play the game. I don't think it's a matter of like, you can say I tipped it out or whatever, but I think it's a matter of, it's like, okay, they made the call, that's their role in the game. Our role is to go by those calls.
Yeah. We have a new voice in the back, and I'm going to come back up here. Yep.
Okay, I think if you go back one slide. From a sport perspective, and looking at the kind of structural development of water polo, how the sport is maturing on a whole, from all different levels, from college becoming growing, and there's a lot more people playing all sorts of things. This is a perfect example of they look at themselves as a group separate from us. They're not, I don't know how many people here are referees, but the bottom line is in order for us to help them, guide them, they should be presenting to us, not telling us anything. Because ultimately, we're responsible for teaching the athletes to do things in a certain manner, to draw a foul, so on and so forth. And until we have more collaboration with them directly, and there's some direct response from us as a group, you can't ask some guy who comes out on deck at the college level. It's interesting because you have guys that you're affecting their way of their livelihood. And at the end of the day, there's no reporting structure. We haven't gotten to a structure where they're responsible to us, because ultimately they need to be responsible to somebody. And that's the biggest issue for me personally.
Yeah.
You look at something like this, and it's like they're telling us what to do. We provide them the opportunity to make
That's
money,
nice.
and they're the first ones to get paid, always. And they're telling us what to do. And I think that's where we've gotten to a place, and as the sport grows, these are kind of growing things. But the structural sense of it, it needs to take the next step, meaning there needs to be coaches involved in the evaluation, there needs to be an ongoing process, and there needs to be an open dialogue, so you can, college coaches, I mean, you should be able to walk, with the referee and speak to them in a normal tone before you have to get to a point where you're going crazy.
Yeah, that's nicely put. You had a hand earlier?
Two things that I think the fan and parents issue is they're not educated enough about the game, and so they yell at things that never make any sense.
Yep.
And so I think as a club level, people should tell their parents how the game actually functions. That's one big problem that I just hear if I ever sit in the stands and I'm in a game. Parents are yelling things that don't even apply to the sport. They're like, "Oh, drowning my baby." It's like, well, it's a foul. Welcome to the sport. I mean, did your kid tell you that? I don't know. Did your coach? The other thing is just using comparison to basketball. I don't know high school basketball, but college and pro basketball. It's very hard for a coach to get a technical, but it's very easy randomly to get a yellow card in water polo. Like I've seen some officials in the first 2 minutes, yellow card, and you're like, whoa, where is that from? Not just sit down the whole game?
Right.
I mean, there's not an even.
Yeah.
With regards to the relationship between referees and coaching, I find like I coach at the high school level and even at the club level, you know, there's a shortage of refs. And I know it's hard when everyone's yelling at the refs, for refs to want a ref. But when one thing's a call, I mean, and we talked about this last year with the whole gray area of the sport.
Right.
And you teach your kid, hey, you turn the guy, he's on your back, you let go of the ball, it's a kick out. And then your kid goes, hey, coach, I did everything you told me. The ref didn't call a kick out. He's not calling it. And so, you know, if we have this newer referee who might not be around very much, and, you know, your kid's doing everything right, and they're not making the call, I mean, isn't it our job to, you not, you know, chew him out or anything, but tell him, hey, he's making the move, he's letting go. Why isn't this a kick out?
Right.
You know.
You had hands early, and then
I think the main problem that we have, our rules are very great. We don't have rules.
right.
I watch soccer, I know the guy's getting kicked to the foot and comes down. Here, I can put somebody on the water, nobody sees it, and therefore there's no foul. And the referees on top of that, very many of them haven't played the game before.
Yeah.
So we know if a player's moving, he's moving their arm, and he stopped moving, very likely he's going to go back. You never see the coaches calling them. So I think as part of our problem in the sport is we can never get away from that.
Right.
What's in the way, you can see, the rules are great. So I think you cannot have the referees get all the power.
Right. Yeah, it's nice. But let's go. One more comment here. And we've got about 5 more minutes because I do want to keep us on schedule. Given
touch on what he was saying up front is we have a role to defend our kids too. You know, if my kid's getting his ass kicked, you know what I mean, the ref's letting it go, and I'm seeing it, and it's blatant. I should have that opportunity to be able to engage the ref and say, hey, this is ridiculous. What do you want me to do with do you want me to turn him loose and retaliate?
oh yeah, no doubt. I think when you get into
They have
violence,
so much power, and in the last JOs, I really had a hard time with our referees.
right.
And it was exactly that. And then when you have a ref blow his whistle and look at you when he blows the whistle, and it's that blatant, I agree. We should be able to talk to them without getting that early yellow card. Because if we get that early yellow card, now it's changed it.
Right.
entirely.
Right. You had a hand a while ago.
I was wondering, like, in general, is it disrespectful or immoral to disagree with the official? I mean, it seems to be that is what the point of that
Yes.
was, and what's the answer to that question?
Yeah.
Can I disagree with my wife without being disrespectful? Can I, disagree, and so, I mean, my wife probably thinks that if I disagree at all, I'm being disrespectful. But is that the case, right?
What's the difference between that goal that gets scored on that back goal in the first quarter and you lose by 1 to that goal that gets scored in the fourth quarter and you lose by 1 by the back goal? What's the difference between
No,
the first
none.
and the fourth quarter? As opposed to just engaging the ref and saying, hey, what was that? You know?
Well, I think so. The tension arises. You've nicely brought it back. excuse me, into the moral realm as we've got about 5 to 10 minutes left here. And tying this all together, if we are absolving ourselves from calling the game by passing off the responsibility to the referee, but then we sometimes want to bring it back and not pass it off when it benefits us, now this is where the tension arises. And it's clearly, we understand the psychology behind it. That's not the interesting part. Like, we're competitive, we want to win, we want our job, we want the award, whatever it is. We understand why that's challenging, but we start to speak out of both sides of our mouths and contradict each other from a moral standpoint. That's where this tension arises. Is the referee in charge or not? Yeah. Yes.
If you look at any other sport, there is dialogue with the coach and referee.
Right.
In soccer, there's a third referee, or the fourth referee that sits right in between the coaches, and there's some dialogue and they have a microphone. In basketball, there's usually three referees. In high school, there's 2.
Right.
But if the coach disagrees with the referee's call, the other referee will walk over and talk to the referee so that the coach is able to get some kind of explanation. In our sport, there is no dialogue between coaches and referees. There's
right.
none. And then the tension between the coach and referee will build up. I think that I know when I've coached and I've tried to talk to referee, they'll immediately shut me down. So I said, okay, if you're not gonna let me talk, I'm gonna yell at you then.
Right, yeah, then we'll come up
I
here.
think similar to the rules that Sasha brought up, I think, you could go and say, hey, the rules are there, but the interpretation is
Right.
So, but the same thing with what he was saying, there should be less of a gray area in what the referees, what can be a yellow, what can be a red, it should be very simple. If you curse at the referee, right, it can be a red card. If you insult them or like insult their intelligence or ask to be blunt, that's one category. It can't be at the quarter ends and you say, you know what, our whole man made a really good turn inside and it looked to me like the arm was on him, but you see something different and yellow card.
Right.
Or you stand up once and say, hey, in one game, and that's a yellow card in the first 2 minutes, but in a different game, the other coach is yelling, hey, 60,000 times, and there's maybe it's all over the place.
Yep.
It's screwed up as the rules.
Right.
So I think the referees need a letter, or we can all work together and say, let's just get on.
Yep,
So
yeah.
I've had, 5-minute line, and this happened to Yovan once, some games he's out way past the 5-meter line and never anything, and then one game it's a red card because he went past half and 5-meter line and you got a yellow card already. There's no rhyme or reason. So
Right.
I think that would help me.
You had an early hand and then go back here. Yeah.
Yeah, just like with what he was saying with, officials in other sports, because every other sport, if there's a foul or something, the game stops. Football, game stops. Baseball or basketball, the game stops. So then, you have that interaction. And it's
Right.
like, when do we make it sure? It's like, do I call a timeout when I get the ball back to go ask what was that all about? Now I'm not getting to talk to my players
Right.
and prepare. During quarters and halftime, do I go talk to the official and not talk to my players? I mean,
Well, that comment will actually help us spill into this, but I do want to take this.
I want to just go a little bit backwards, and I know we have coaches in the room from, coach age group, coaches that coach college, and we're talking about morals and kind of winning and, right, doing everything we can to win. So my question for you is, like, at what point is that acceptable, right? At what point of coaching are we okay to be coaching to win at all costs? Or is that acceptable at all in your mind, right?
First of all, I'll be asking the questions here.
I want to get your
Yeah. So I'm on the slightly conservative end. Now I've played with, a number of the players in this room. I mean, when I played at Stanford or in the national, there's a foul at set, and I'd look the other way and flick the ball out from under his hand, and then steal. And I never once. It was always, here we go. It wasn't off of me. So that is not the way I played, and it's a chance I was a more successful player because I hadn't delved into this. But I mean, I do think that a couple people said, well, in the grand scheme of things, big picture. Oh, yeah, in the grand scheme of things, we're trying to throw a ball into a rectangle more than the other group. What is the grand scheme of things? And for me, there are some things that have now superseded getting the ball into the floating rectangle. So to ask to draw an explicit line is a great question for which we don't have time here. But for example, like my example of our goalies no longer pretend that they didn't touch the ball. They don't say, oh, Mr. Referee, I want to let you know I touched it. Let's do the right thing. They just, if it goes off their hand and out of bounds, they just come down and wait for the referee to make the call. So there's an example of somewhere where I have drawn a line. I said, we're not going to behave this way because I believe that it doesn't respect the referee, our competitors, the game in general. And it's a relatively minor thing. It happens once every other game. But it's more of an Aristotelian foundation for playing, not an episode here and there. So hopefully that sort of a snapshot. And that actually allows me to spill into this nicely because this is the last about 2 or 3 minutes to kind of capture this. There's a goalie in our league who is extremely, flamboyant would be the term. He's from Brazil. He was very Brazilian in all the great ways. He would make a save, sometimes literally flex his arms, and it fired the team up. He ended up earning the starting position. The backup goalie had lost his position, but when he would come in one time, well, I guess I'll show my cards. These are my goalies. The backup goalie came in, made a save, and called a timeout and yanked him out, right? So the distinction here is the backup goalie was explicitly like, I just crushed you, you can't do that here. It was aimed right at, sorry, I've been picking on you the whole time. It was aimed right at you, whereas the other goalie was never, it wasn't a like, yeah, it was like often to all the girls in the stands, but it was like a firing up. And I was looking at what shooters were doing. Like when shooters score a goal, like, you know, just a fist up in the air, not at the goalie, but up in the air. And so at halftime of the CCS quarterfinals, the referee had said, after our goalie did this, he said, you got to tone your goalie down or he's gonna get ejected. And I was saying, for what? What's he doing? What's he doing? Watch him after he makes a save. I am. What is he doing? That's taunting. No, he's celebrating. He's not aiming at it. And he said, Jack, I'm telling you now. And they're like, oh no. So at halftime, I had go and I said, I can promise you he's not aiming this. If you watch the video, I've told him actually he can't look at the shooter, so it's not perceived as taunting. And the other ref came over and said, he can pump one fist. Right? And I went over this like, I was like, so he can't go like this? He can go like this. And then in the championship game, and this is where there does get a little bit of gray area, 5-meter penalty shot was called, the correct call. And our goalie says, I'm going this way. That's my best Brazilian accent. And now that gets questionable for me. I actually don't throw it in the taunting category. That gets questionable for me. The shooter scored and then went like that and pointed at the goalie, which is not questionable. But so I guess this is where there's an interesting line. When I played, I would like to make a big save and like go underwater and come up like nothing had happened. I don't want my players to have to play with my personality. I want their personality to shine through. Without it crossing over the line and being disrespectful and taunting. And so this, like the quarterfinal example of the referee saying he can do this, but he can't do this. And then the championship example where the goalie says, I'm going this way. Not like, you suck, I'm gonna crush you, just I'm letting you know I'm going this way. And then the field player scoring and pointing is where it gets interesting, yeah.
Well, I guess it'd be the same for a coach. It's like a referee's gonna accept the, hey, you know, watch that next time, you know, versus hey, across
right.
the pool. And so, like the referees again just want control sometimes in games of what is being portrayed in and on the deck. And I think it's hard to decipher as a coach sometimes to your players how much you're gonna, you know, insert yourself in the game versus not with what referees are reffing, what referees are not reffing.
Yep.
And so it is obviously the golden question in our sport of what we're allowed to do any given.
Yeah, kind of connecting with Wolf, actually a number of people's earlier points. Yeah.
Well, I looked back through back goal, you know, and I'm wondering, the question did you ever, because I'm thinking, well, I'm seeing this guy get fired up, and I want to go in there and I'm going to get fired up too. Yeah. And it just so happened that maybe in his mind he's like, this meant the same thing as doing this.
Right.
You know, I seen you goalie play, and I was like, man, he's really excited in the first quarter. You know, and he throughout the game, and I'm wondering, like, I felt bad for him. If you pulled him right after that, was he like, coach, you let this guy do this all the time?
Here's here's what's
why can't I?
This will tie this up very nicely because again I want to be able to finish here on time. There's a little bit of Coach Randy Burgess in my head, who's no longer coaching. Some of you may know, he's retired after 726 wins. When I was in high school, I saw Duplanty at the Hawaiian Invitational. They took a lob and get that out of here. Actually, I think he said, get that crap out of here, right? Before the ball even got to him, and I was a freshman, I was like, that's so badass, oh yeah. So, like, third high school game, as a starting goalie, get that out of here! And like, as I'm blocking it, Burgess is calling a timeout, and he could get out of the goal, Bowen. And it was like it wasn't a championship, but it was like an important game. And I was like, what? I just pulled a Duplanty, like, I'm a badass, why, right? And he's like, what was the point of that? Like, how's your interaction with the shooter? Like, asking me these questions. He didn't say anything at the time. You just get out and sit there and, but like that kind of a thing where like this is aimed at the guy who just failed. There's no doubt about it in my mind. Whereas like this and this, a shooter pumping his fist isn't aimed at the goalie. Like that's the shooter celebrating what he's done. To your point, also interestingly, the referees in another game at Bellarmine said, we don't think he should celebrate big saves in the first quarter. They said if he blocks a one-on goalie, a penalty shot, or a big fourth quarter save, he could do something like this. Right, and I thought, like, I was saying, like, I want to respect the way that you're officiating the game, like I really do, but it doesn't, what do I tell him? Like, that's big enough, Thiago, one fist for that save. No! Right, like it was this sort of an awkward, and so again, I guess it's that, the gray area, but the underlying foundation to take this home and bring it back to Aristotle is really looking at, the role of ourselves as educators, regardless of what level we're at, our role and our relationship with the referee in all instances, whether it's for us or against us, and then establishing that sort of a foundation. And it's actually one of the real, like it makes the experience as a coach like infinitely richer than just the excitement of the X's and O's. So thank you guys for hosting me again and making this kind of a topic important at a sports conference. I think that's impressive unto itself, and thanks for a great conversation.